Back at 29 past the hour, let's bring in Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst Eugene Robinson. Also with us from Salt Lake City, former Health and Human Services Secretary Mike Leavitt. And from Tampa, Florida, Republican Congressman and Senior Deputy Whip Dennis Ross, who's set to introduce legislation to restrict flights from West Africa. So why don't I start with you, Secretary Leavitt. Are we doing enough? Do we need to restrict flights?
Well, we're following a very well-established game plan that's been refined over many years to first try to smother it, and that hasn't succeeded. The second is then to try to contain it. And that's the phase we're in right now, and we need to do everything we can, both internationally and domestically, to contain this disease. That's much more efficient than having to fight it on a broad basis.
You think that do you think we've been prepared, and the events of the past 10 days have reflected a country that was ready?
The trouble with a pandemic, influenza, or a disease like we're dealing with Ebola is that anything you say in advance seems a bit alarmist. Anything that you've done in advance after it occurs seems inadequate, and that's where we are. This country is not without preparation. We've been working hard over the last 8 years, I think, as a country to get better prepared, but we are vulnerable, and we need to know that, and we need to continue to prepare. I think we need to put particular emphasis on state and local preparation, not just federal response.
All right, Eugene Robinson, I'll let you take it to Dennis Ross. I know you're against banning flights.
Well, yeah, I do think, though, that it's a question worth discussing. I mean, I frankly wish the question was engaged more by the epidemiologists who tell us it's a bad idea. But Congressman Ross, they do say it's a bad idea. Why do you think it's a good idea? The consensus of epidemiologists is that a travel ban would, in their professional opinion, be counterproductive.
Well, we know two things, first of all. First of all, we know that had Thomas Duncan not been allowed to come to the United States, there would be 2 people in Texas that right now would not have Ebola. And 2, we know that the CDC has been absolutely in its handling of the outbreak in the United States. That gives a great deal of concern to my constituents and the others in the United States. So let's back it up from there. Let's go to where the source of this problem is. The president has the authority to ban these flights. Yes, I believe that we can nip this in the bud, if you will, at least by banning those flights temporarily until such time as the CDC believes that the epidemic is under control, and also make sure that we don't issue visas to travelers from over there. You know, we have a good border patrol, believe it or not, and they can catch these people with fake passports and fake visas as they come across the border. It just seems to me that we ought to at least have the debate on this and flesh this out, and it's why I filed the bill to allow for the banning of these flights.
Congressman, just one quick question, just to clarify, what flights are you talking about? Because there are not regularly scheduled commercial flights from the affected countries to the United States. There are none.
No direct flights from West Africa to the United States.
We are talking about we're talking about travelers, but we're not talking about flights because there aren't any.
I believe there are some flights, but be that as it may,
there are no direct flights that come to the United States from West Africa. That is incorrect.
Then we don't have any problem. Everybody's contained, correct? They're not.
No, they come through Europe, which is why
exactly.
I think members of Congress who are advocating for a travel ban need to do a better job of explaining why that would solve the problem outright when they come through European countries. What is preventing them from traveling from Africa to Europe?
It will not solve the problem. I never said it was going to solve the problem. It is a step in the right direction. We know where the source is. We know that they're traveling here. Look, once they come across into Central and South America, we've got an even greater problem. Yes, we can control this, again, by not issuing visas to these travelers that are making their way through a triangulated way to come from these affected areas through Europe or through other countries. We can control that, but we're taking no initiative to do that.
Okay, Sam Stein to Secretary Leavitt.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, no, I think this is exactly correct.
It's incorrect. There are so much misinformation about it.
Secretary Leavitt, switching topics because we spent a lot of time on the travel ban. I'm curious, a lot of people look at this and say, Ebola isn't a new epidemic. There were outbreaks in 2008, certainly before then. It's been around since the 70s. Why hasn't the biomedical research community created a vaccine or therapeutics at this point in time? I'm wondering if you could walk the viewers into what the process to create that vaccine is and why it hasn't happened today.
Actually, an enormous amount of research has been done over the last 10 years on Ebola, because this isn't the first time it has appeared. In the last 10 years, it's appeared a number of times in Africa. We actually have 4 candidate vaccines that are working its way through the FDA process to assure that it's safe. I'm told by those who are in the process of that in fact, we could see a vaccine ready for production that would be safe and efficient by 2015. It couldn't be done in the final stages before that because every time it appears, the virus is a bit different, and it has to be done at the time that the virus appears. I do think, by the way, I could shed just a little light on the travel ban if you want to take that subject up again.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
A little bit more exciting than my question, so go ahead.
Well, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you when I was secretary that we did study this extensively in the context of H5N1. And as you point out, a lot of the epidemiologists suggest that it would be counterproductive. I would point out that most of those studies were done in the context of a widespread, very efficiently transmitted disease. This is a disease that is not as easily passed from person to person. It's more localized right now. So I do think it's a legitimate debate. But I think over and over, public health officials have concluded that it's difficult. And the main problem is that, as has been pointed out, the person wants to get to the United States and they fly to Barcelona and wait a few days, then they're on a flight from Barcelona. And yes, I agree that we can track them, and as pointed out, this may be a unique situation, but I think that most of the study that's been done on travel ban has been done in the context of a widespread epidemic as opposed to a very narrowly confined one.
Okay, former Secretary Mike